Hi guys, it's Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, ex-immigration officer, and former high school teacher, coming to you live once again today in another edition of I guess it's the EE Live Q&A, the Express Entry Live question and answer session, which we've been doing for, wow, I guess it's been almost 2 years. Is that possible? Maybe. Well, I'm back here again, broadcasting on my Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page, and we will also be sharing this link to the it's the Express Entry Law Private Facebook group, which is where I used to do it, but I found that it was more restrictive. So anyone who's tuning in now and watching it through my business page has the ability to share the link with other people that you think might like to see it. So I just want to remind everyone that as people are starting to file in now, I can see on my screen, make sure that if you have a friend or someone else that you know is interested in watching these live Q&As and in fact getting your questions answered live from me, Canadian immigration lawyer, I encourage you to tag them or share this live video, and then it can reach more people, because Facebook sucks and they often are constantly restricting what I share unless I pay for it. And the reality is this information is completely given freely, and it kind of irritates me when Facebook says I have to pay them to get it out to the people who actually want to hear it and watch it in the first place. But that's a separate discussion. So today is August the 20th. It's a beautiful day outside here in the summer. One of the things that I love to do more than anything else is to go backpacking. And I enjoy that, but I also enjoy doing long trail rides on my quarter horse, Joe. Some of you maybe have got horses, or maybe you've ridden a little bit, but it's one thing that I love to do back in the mountains. So while we are waiting for people to jump in on this latest session of the EE Live Q&A, I want to share a little bit of a journey that I did up into the mountains of southern Alberta. And we were destined for a beautiful lake called Grizzly Lake. And I'm going to show you what it's like to ride, at least my view, as I rode up to Grizzly Lake. So I'm going to share that while we're waiting for people to jump on. So I've got a friend who's a veterinarian in front of me, and he's actually bringing a spare horse along with him. So you can see the mountains, and it's actually quite a steep drop off to the right. And that's where we came from, back there. And it was about a 3.5-hour ride. And then I'm going to pause it right there. And that little mountain that's peeking up, you can see the top of the mountain ahead of us, right in the middle of your screen. You can see a little mountain that's just peeking up from the back. That's where we're headed. So it was a very, very, very long ride. All right, so I'm going to shift my screen back here now. So I had a great time. And here was the destination where we got to. Right there. Now, the funny thing about this, there's me and Joe. The irony, I guess, is the best way of describing it, is that when we got up to this beautiful lake, Ruby Lake, my sole purpose was to fish, because I'd heard there were nice big brook trout in this beautiful lake. Well, the funny thing is, when we got up here, I walked around the whole lake, I fished, and nothing. It was so quiet. Nothing was rising. There was nothing. And so we had a nice lunch, and then as it got closer to the end of the day, then we started riding back, and we decided to take a little bit of a different trail. And what did we find but the actual Grizzly Lake? We were at Ruby Lake. So beautiful lake, but Grizzly Lake was maybe about 10 minutes from here, riding back down the trail a little bit further into the valley, and we totally missed it. And of course, it was 5 o'clock in the evening. It was starting, we were going to have to ride hard to get down before it was dark. So there was no time to stop and to put my fly line in and catch a nice little brook trout. So needless to say, I loved Ruby Lake, but the next time I go up there, I will not be going to Ruby Lake, but I will be headed for Grizzly. So, wow, it was hilarious. Well, actually, it wasn't hilarious. I was so sad and so disappointed because the ride one way was like 3.5 hours. It was crazy. All right, so it looks like we're just about ready here. I did want to share one other thing with you guys too that was super funny over the weekend. So I think many of you know that I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And one of the things that we do in our temples is we get married. And the marriage ceremony in there is not, we don't consider it till death do you part, but for eternity. So we call it a sealing. And my niece was getting sealed. And so when you go into the temple, you often take your shoes off and you leave them at the entryway. And so we did that, and the sealing happened, and it was a wonderful ceremony. And then on the way out, I started looking for my shoes, and I couldn't find them. And I guess what happened, and there's lots of elderly people that attend the temple and that work in the temple all the time, and I'm assuming someone must have assumed my shoes were theirs. And so I saw another pair there in the entryway that kind of looked like mine and were the same size, and I suspect the person just made a mistake and took my shoes. But they definitely got an upgrade because those were my good work shoes, my church shoes, some nice Echo shoes. Anyway, so it was the wedding and we had the photos and everything else, and the only thing that I had was a camouflage pair of Crocs. And I don't know if you guys know what Crocs are, but they're kind of this, kind of spongy, rubbery material that are like sandals almost. So I have to show you this. So this is me and my family that are here, my wife and my son Connor and Michaela. And if you look down low on the bottom, look at my feet, you'll see I'm wearing these Crocs instead of nice black shoes like Connor's wearing. And so I'll just zoom in here. And this is the last little thing I'll show you guys. It was so funny. So you can see here, that's what I was wearing, these Crocs, all day for the wedding and all the pictures. But whatever, it's all good. And so, wow, it was so fun. It was so much fun. All right, let's see where everybody's tuning in from here. Looks like we've got a good group of people that are here live. Those of you who come in and watch live are rewarded because I dedicate time to answer your questions right on the spot. Before we get started, those who send an email to stephanie@stringham.ca and put EE Live in their subject line have the ability to have their questions considered for me responding to them right at the beginning of the session. So I can't answer everybody's questions, so I apologize in advance if there's people that have posted here and sent me an email or Stephanie an email, and then they don't have the opportunity to actually get their question answered. But I have to be selective because I want to give time for all of you that are watching live. All right, so as we go through here, please, as always, in the comment section, post where you're listening in from. This is a part of the EE Live Q&A that I really enjoy the most, just to see where you're tuning in from. And as we all know, today there was another draw, and that draw was 457 comprehensive ranking system points. And in many respects, people have been just hoping and hoping that it would drop below 460, and it did. And in fact, one of the people that sent in a question today was asking if I thought it would drop down to 456. Well, the reality is we don't really know for certain what they're going to do, but it's dependent upon how many people are actually applying and getting through. Because remember, and this is something I want to really reiterate to all of you, and I'm actually going to share my screen here so you can see this. Okay, lots of people spend lots of hours trying to guess how many nominations, or I should say how many invitations to apply have been extended. And as you go through here, you can see how many people are in the queue, how many people are waiting, and you can spend so much time trying to guess and figure out whether or not you have the chance of being drawn, which is great. But understand these numbers here, these 3,600 that were given an invitation to apply today, August the 20th, and you can see the cutoff, if you submitted your application before March 21st, 2019, then you received an invitation to apply. Those of you who submitted your profile after that date will not get an ITA. And I've got some clients, once again, that were drawn, and I'm really excited for them. One was at 458, which was a huge success for them. They're really, really happy. But these numbers here are just invitations. And you know as well as I do, anybody could put anything they wanted in the profile just to see what would happen. Now, people don't usually do that. But if you have work experience that you can't prove, if you have study that you've put into your profile, and then you don't have degrees or diplomas, which is really quite rare. But if they're not in place, there are a lot of ways in which your application can get rejected. And many people do get their applications bounced. And so even the people that are given invitations to apply realize they've made a mistake, realize when they start filling in the EAPR portion that they can't answer all the questions, or that there's a problem, or that they're medically inadmissible or criminally inadmissible. So there's a lot of reasons that bounce people out. So as we get closer to the end of the year, sometimes that gives the government an opportunity to try to assess, okay, do we need to extend more invitations, or do we just stay with the status quo? So I just wanted to point that out, and I do want to extend a special congratulations to those of you who did receive an invitation to apply. That is so awesome. Yeah, understand these 3,600 here that were drawn with 457. It's just an invitation. And so ultimately the numbers, we don't really know where they're at because we don't have the actual statistics on rejections that are in real time, if you know what I mean. Eventually we can probably do a access to information request and get the percentage of rejections. But at this stage, we don't know, at least in real time. All right. Whew, there we go. All right. Gurjeet says, how are you holding up? I am holding up really good. Really good. Okay, let's see who we got here. Okay, Lukaman says, hello, man. Hello. Bilal says, wow, beautiful mountains. Yes, they were awesome. Hey, Mark, let's see, this guy says, how are you going to find time for clients with all those ITAs if you're traveling? Because I do it in one day. And if I do not take time away from myself, just like all of you, you end up being burned out. And then you're no good to your clients. You're no good to the people you're trying to help. So those times that I take away, and when I think about the times that I've been traveling, that was a 1 day up and back trip. So I took I think it was a Wednesday I took. And in addition to what I'm doing, I've instituted some awesome options for my clients. One of them is my fantastic review service. So often, you guys know this, those who have submitted their applications through representatives know that you'll fill out the questionnaire, you'll send it to them, and then it'll take forever for your profile to be created, or it will take forever for them to get the EAPR completed for you, when you, in all honesty, would probably do it faster yourself. So one of the things I'm really pushing to as I go forward and figure out kind of what I really want for the future of my practice, I'm starting to realize how valuable it is to actually have you guys complete your own express entry applications and then have me review. And in those circumstances, I can actually provide the real value, which is me, to way more people than if I'm taking on clients, having to have staff upload documents, upload information, and then have you review it, and then I review it, and then we both review it together. So my silver plan is awesome. It's like 50% of what a normal Canadian immigration lawyer would charge. So with that being said, remember, if you received an ITA and you want my assistance to go through, I will go through everything, not just the ITA and your EAPR, but your profile, to make sure that you didn't put something in there that resulted in an invitation to apply, but really you can't prove. And so, or if you need to make changes, how to write your letters of explanation so that you can help an officer understand that the change you need to make is not going to have to result in your application being refused. And then it still meets the minimum entry criteria, it still meets the eligibility, and you're still above the invitation to apply cutoff. All right. Okay, let's see who else we have here. Okay, Faisal likes the Crocs. You bet, that was funny. Faisal says want to settle in Canada. Awesome. Okay, Islam's is asking some questions. Those who are tuning in live, just hang on for a little bit. We will get to those questions and I'll tell you when to post them. If you post them now, I'll skip through them and I'll need you to repost after, okay? All right, so I'll give you the sign when you can start posting your questions live, and then I'll get to those. Marlon says, good morning, Mark. Good morning. Maritza, just you can re-ask your question in a little bit. Abdi is from Slave Lake. Yes, you are, my friend. A good client. Abdi is tuning in. That's awesome. And then we've got some other questions, so hold off on those guys, and I'll tell you when to repost them, because I'm going to go through the ones that were sent in by email first. Muhanadad says, hello, Mark and all. And Gurjeet says, it was good news today. We can expect a substantial drop in CRS if we see back-to-back draws. It's possible. It sure is. Yeah, if they do quick ones. All right. Okay, so let's leave it at that, and let's continue forward. So I'm going to start off with a couple of these questions actually relate to those who are in Canada, and then I'm going to jump to some other ones. So here is what we have. So off the start, this one is from Winnie, and Winnie says, my question is regarding increasing your CRS points for some on a postgraduate work permit who have a job offer but don't have an LMIA. So this job is permanent and continuous, but because I'm on a postgrad work permit, a start and end date had to be mentioned on the appointment letter, which tallies with the work permit validity. What can the applicant ask his employer to provide in order to make it a valid job offer per CIC and to get the additional 50 points? Well, Winnie, this is a great question. And the short answer is, if you're on a postgrad work permit, it doesn't matter what your employer does, you will not be eligible for those extra 50 points. And the reason, and I am going to show, I'm going to go to my screen here. Let's see if I can pull up the actual instructions here. And really what it's called is arranged employment in the regulations. So let's open this up and see if the link that they now have is actually helpful. Okay, so we'll scroll down here. So arranged employment or offer of employment. Okay, and I'm going to shrink this one down so it's a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so what I have here, what I looked up was offer of employment for skilled immigrants. So you remember, you're on a postgrad work permit, Winnie, and so if you are on a postgrad work permit, you're actually ineligible because only work permits that have a named employer are eligible to be used for that extra 50 or 200 points if you're working in a senior executive 00 knock. So you can see here, it's got all this information on what it needs to have, blah, blah, blah. We don't even care about that. What we care about here is the categories in which you have to fit in order to get that job offer. So everybody pay close attention to this. This is important. So the first one right here is basically, and you can see LMIA, it's an employer with a new positive LMIA that approves the offer and names you and your position. And so basically what this means is we call this a permanent LMIA. It's a labor market impact assessment that's used to support your permanent residence, but not to obtain a work permit. So the employer says, yes, when Winnie gets to Canada, I will offer Winnie a job. And so therefore, and I can show that there's no Canadian or permanent resident available to do this position. And so that's one thing, a permanent LMIA. The next one is if you're currently working in a skilled occupation and it's based on an LMIA. So once again, instead of being outside of Canada, you're actually in Canada on an LMIA based work permit. You're working for the employer listed on the work permit. You're authorized to work in Canada on the day you apply and when the visa is issued. So your work permit needs to stretch through. And then your current employer made you an offer based on the things that actually up here, that it's employer, continuous, paid, blah, blah, blah. But we don't worry about that because this is the hurdle, one of these three categories. And then the last one is the only one that doesn't require a labor market impact assessment. So you have a valid work permit for a NOC 0A or B job that is exempt from needing an LMIA. So examples of those are intercompany transfers from all over the world, or NAFTA work permits, which is soon to become the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, But those international treaties or different things that Canada has where we issue work permits to individuals that name a specific employer, they don't require an LMIA because there's some form of reciprocity often. You know, people can transfer from Canada to different countries that have intercompany relationships. So we allow people to come in under those same similar type provisions to Canada. Okay, so you're on that kind of work permit and you're currently working for the employer. And here's the most important part. You have 1 year of full-time work experience for that employer, or an equal amount in part-time, but generally it's full-time work. And then they provide the offer to you. So that is essentially it. So I took a little bit more time to talk about that, but anyone that's on a post-grad work permit will not be eligible for those additional 50 points. Great question, Winnie. All right, let's see what we have next here. Okay, I'm going to flip a little bit more. Okay, so this one is from Welwyn. And Welwyn says, there's a little bit of a lead in here. He says, I came across your YouTube channel last week and I was taken aback with the amount of information you provided. It has cleared almost all of my doubts regarding express entry. I'm really grateful and thankful at the same time for all the work you and your team do for this community. I was notified that you'll be conducting a live Q&A session today and be very happy if you could take a look at the below questions. So one thing I want to say, Welwyn, is that I'm just going to answer the first one because I have to make sure I give time to everybody. And for all of your questions, that's almost equivalent to a paid consultation. So if you would like me to go through and clarify all the other aspects in the questions that you have, you'd need to book a paid consultation. But I'm going to answer your first question. And this is the question. It says, and these questions relate to the Canadian Experience class. So Welwyn is single and they're applying through the CEC. The question is, what amount should I declare for proof of funds? CEC doesn't require proof of funds as per the website, but I heard that when you receive an ITA, there will be a column to submit documents for proof of funds. Is that right? The answer is 100% correct. And there's two ways that you can treat it. So if you have received your ITA, well, really, it's when you're completing your profile. So if you're completing your profile and you know you're going to be drawn under the Canadian Experience class, the funds that you list in your proof of funds, if you list it and you're drawn under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, then you have to prove that. And when you get your ITA and you submit your EAPR, there's a section right there that says amount of funds that you have essentially to settle in Canada. So one of the strategies that I use with my clients, because if I know they're drawn under CEC, I just put 0. They don't have any funds that they're going to use to settle in Canada because they don't need them. Alternatively, some people they take the position, well, I don't want to list 0. Is that a misrepresentation? Then list whatever you want, like whatever the amount of funds that you feel you have to support yourself in Canada. You can list those in there. And then when your personal document checklist opens up a spot for you to include your proof of funds, all you have to do is include upload a little explanation, a little piece of paper that says, please note I was drawn under the CEC, the Canadian Experience class, and as such, I do not need to provide any proof of funds. And that's how you deal with it. It's as simple as that. All right. Good question, Welwyn. Okay. Next and last question on the Canadian Experience class that I have is from Simranpreet. And Simranpreet says, hi, my wife works under NOC B category for the last 10 months. She has just completed her 1,560 hours at the job. My question is, does she qualify for the 50 points in order to apply for permanent residence under the Express Entry CEC? Okay, so this is where we're kind of mixing a few things up. Oh, and then Simranpreet says, or she has to work for 12 months. Please clarify. As some say you can and others say that you can't. So here's how it works. And I'm going to share my screen with you guys again. And this time we're going to go back to the CEC eligibility. I think this should work. Let's see if this is the one. Okay, it is. All right. So these are the requirements for the Canadian Experience class. And if we go to the minimum requirements, obviously you need the language level and you need at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada in the last 3 years. The important part to remember is that that work experience does not need to be in a row, not like the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So you can use bits and pieces from different work experiences. However, I can tell you that it actually has to be 1 year. So you can't accumulate 1,560 hours of skilled work experience in 9 months and then try to count it as one. You actually need to work the full 1 year. Anything above 1,560 is simply just not counted. So in the case of your spouse, if she only has 10 months, then she would need to work the full 12 months in order to receive that 1 year of Canadian work experience. Now, you have indicated here 50 points, and this is where I want to clarify, because for 1 year of Canadian work experience, it's actually 35 points. So you may be confusing the 50 points with what's given for a job offer. And if that's the case, if your spouse is working in one of those conditions we just described, has a work permit that's based on an LMIA, or has been working for at least 1 year, once again, reaching that 1 year on a named work permit. So not an open one, but one that actually lists her employer's company name on her permit. If she's through an intercompany transfer or something along those lines, you'd need to work the full 12 months before you'd be eligible for the 50 points, plus, like I said before, the 35 points for 1 year of Canadian work experience. All right, good question. Okay, next one. Okay, and this is Sandeep. Will CRS go below 456? I'm at 456 since June 2019. Yes, my friend, that is the question of all questions. And you can see when we did the rounds of invitations and we switch here, you can see that the cutoff was March 24th. So there are people still ahead of you at 457 that were not drawn because they submitted their profile like you after March 24th. So there's a few of those people at 457 ahead of you, plus everybody else that's higher than 457 that will be in the queue ahead of you before the next draw. And we don't know if they do another quick draw. Maybe there will be the availability of you to get an ITA in the next one, Sandeep. But it just depends. And I also see you've indicated here that you're 31, and so age is a huge issue, because on your 32nd birthday, you're then going to lose 5 points. So I understand how stressful it is. All right, okay. So next question here. This one's from Mirza. And Mirza says, hey there, Mark. It's actually Raymond from Islamabad, Pakistan. These live sessions are a lifesaver, and you're truly a star. I got a question regarding the 6 months of bank statements. Now, I've submitted the statements from December 15th to June 15th in my EAPR. Will that be counted as 6 months, or should the month have actually started from the 1st of December? So remember, if we go back here, and I'll share my screen again, and I'm going to go to the completeness check for express entry right here. And if we go down to proof of funds, you will see here that in no place does it say you need to provide bank statements. But what it does say you should provide is an official letter from one or more financial institutions that list all your current bank and investment accounts, as well as outstanding debts such as credit cards, debts, and loans. Many people say, well, do I need to provide a statement from my credit card? Well, it says right there. So if my clients have credit cards, even if they don't have a balance, in those cases, I will provide a statement, the credit card statement showing there's nothing owing, or there's very little owing, or whatever it is. But when it comes to your actual bank statements, then they ask for an official letter. So print it on letterhead. It must include your name and the contact information for the financial institution, the account numbers, the date each was opened, and the current balance of each account. And this is where people get a little bit confused, as well as the average balance for the past 6 months. So in your situation, Raymond, you can see that your bank statements are not specifically required. But if you, like many people, have banks that won't give a letter that includes all of this information, then often we will include 6 months of bank statements just to show proof of funds. But understand, it's not mandatory. It all depends, and you haven't indicated here, it all depends on what your actual letter from the bank looks like. But just understand it's not a mandatory requirement. What they're looking for is the average balance for the past 6 months. And remember, as always, they can come back and they can ask for other documents if IRCC wants to. All right. Okay. Good question. Okay. Next one. Okay. So this one's from Aaron, and he says, I have watched most of your videos and find it helpful in a lot of ways. I have a question and we'll keep it short. All right. I have an EE profile that is now expired and another one that was found ineligible due to various reasons. Now, in those profiles, I had entered some information that may not be correct related to work experience. So if I file another EE profile, I think is what he means, or plan to come on a study permit, on a student permit, will these profiles have an impact on my study plan? Also, those were entered for test purposes to see how many points do I secure exactly while I file the EE. Okay, so I'm going to use Aaron as a very, very clear instructor for all of you. Never, never, ever use a profile as a test just to see how many points you're going to get. Instead, you're going to use the Crs Tool. That is the one that you're going to use right here. This tool will allow you to assess what your comprehensive ranking system score is. And you don't need to use any other tool that people create. The reality is this one right here, and I'll just put it, I'll copy it and I'll paste it into the chat here for our live video. But this here, understand, is where you can get your score. You would never ever want to use a profile as a test. And why? This is an answer to your question, Aaron. Yes, a profile technically is not an official application before immigration, but your history is locked in. The profile that you submit when you actually click submit, you're attesting when you submit that profile that the information is true, correct, and complete. That's your attestation. And so what officers sometimes will do, they'll go back and because you've got conflicting information in previous profiles, it may not result in a direct rejection, but what will happen is an officer will look at it and they'll say, well, what's going on? Aaron says he was working in all these different occupations and he clicked submit and nothing, and yes, he didn't get an ITA, but now in this one this new one he submitted, it's not consistent with everything else. And so, yeah, it can cause huge problems for you. And the only way to deal with it is to try to explain it in a letter of explanation. So if you submit your profile, you get an ITA, then at that stage you say, please note, I made a big mistake. I was just testing to see if, how many points I would get depending upon different contingencies or different circumstances. And I didn't appreciate that, even though it wasn't an official application to IRCC, that it still forms a part of the record. So what I recommend for you, Aaron, is that you provide a letter of explanation. If you get an ITA that says, please note, I made these mistakes in previous applications, or this was just a test, or however you want to explain it, but please note that wasn't true. This is exactly how it is, and I'm so sorry I didn't appreciate what was happening. And then you hope for the best, right? And your reference letters and things that you include in your document checklist will provide proof. When it comes to the impact on a study permit application, I can tell you that all over the world, when people apply for study permits now and they have an express entry profile in the queue or had one, sometimes officers also use that as an indicator that your intention of going to Canada is not temporary. And temporary intent is still a significant component to study permits. And with the tons and tons of people that are submitting study permit applications now, we are starting to see a lot more refusals. And the reality is the government is starting to be more stringent on study permit applications. And for individuals who are over 30 years old looking to go back to school, maybe they've had a significant gap in education, all of those factors can reduce the likelihood of your success. But even in the best of circumstances, I've seen candidates get their applications refused. So if you have a choice and you have not yet submitted a profile and you want to go to school in Canada, I recommend that you go through, use this tool right here to assess what your score is. If it's too low and you know you need to go to school, then I recommend that you apply for your study permit before submitting your profile. And then that way you'll give yourself the best chance of success in getting your study permit approved. And if it's approved, great. Then you're going to come to Canada, you're going to do all those things, then you're going to submit your profile. But I wouldn't do it in advance if you don't feel that you have a really good chance of success. Now, ultimately, everybody has to make those decisions for themselves. If your study permit is refused, well, it doesn't matter. It's not going to impact on your eligibility for express entry or permanent residence in Canada. Some of you may work in occupations where there's a chance you could get drawn through one of the provincial nominee programs. So you need to take that into consideration as well. And once again, I'm not really able to tell everybody exactly what they should do from a strategic standpoint. The best way to have me give you a full overview of what your options are is to go right here to my website and just book a paid consultation, and I can answer all the questions. And I've actually informed, because we're closing in on the end of the month, and because there's a lot of people that have just gotten an invitation to apply and want to move quickly, I've instructed her to open up all of my calendar for the next 10 days of this month so that anyone who wants to book a consult with me can get in now. I was sick for quite a while. I was recovering and I was staying on top of the existing clients that I had, but now I'm fully open to be able to take on more clients. And the best way, if you're trying to figure out what to do with studying or express entry, is just to book a consult, and we can go through everything specifically as it relates to you. All right, so this is where you can go to book that paid consult. Okay, let's jump ahead to the very last one. This is the last one, so you guys can prepare your questions in the comment section, but don't submit them yet. Don't submit your questions yet. I'll let you know when. Okay, this one is from Aftab, and he says, "Hello, Mark, good day to you. My question is regarding gift deeds. I've used a gift deed of around $3,500 Canadian, $3,500, and have supplied it to CIC along with my acknowledgement of receipt. I've taken it from my father, and it says that the gift is made out of love and affection, and I can use it in any manner. I've heard that it should also say that the donors don't expect the money back. Is that true, or what I have actually provided would suffice?" Okay, so this is a good example. I get lots of questions that are very, very specific. And this, generally speaking, relates to gift deeds and what the contents of a gift deed needs to look like. In my Express Entry Do-It-Yourself guide, I have lots of samples of gift deeds, ones that are successful, ones that work. And what you're asking here is the statement that the gift is irrevocable. So that means that, yeah, once the money has been transferred from your father, in this case to you, that under no circumstance, legal or otherwise, can your father ask for you to pay it back. That's what irrevocable means. If you did not have that specific language in your gift deed, well, it just comes down to an officer. It depends upon the officer, how they assess it, whether or not they will accept the content, the existing content of your gift deed. And that's not something that I can answer. I know that some officers probably would not get too hung up over that. Others, maybe they could feel that they needed that language. It's up to that officer to decide. All right, so that is the end of the listener questions. And as of where I posted the link to my consultation page right here in the feed, you can now post your questions, and as they come in, I will answer them in order. If for whatever reason I end up missing it in some way, form, or fashion, your question, please be patient with me, because sometimes as the questions start to pile in, then I am struggling a little bit to figure out where I was as I'm shifting back and forth. So as it stands right now, feel free to post your questions. I'm just, let's see here. I'm just looking. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, so for example here, and I'll just show you this kind of front here. I've taken everything out. Yeah, so you can see here, I can see all the posts being made here. It's kind of hard to see, but this is a sample that one of my clients provided, and you can see here in this wording, and I've tried to redact all the things that relate specifically to my client. So it says, whereas the donor is absolutely entitled to the amount of her own and out of free will and accord, and while in a sound state of mind is desirous of making a gift to the donee residing at blah, 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 blah. This here, you can see, is just, it's the first page. There's a couple other pages attached to it, but that's the kind of thing. I just wanted to show you that because that's the kind of thing that you would find in my my guide. And actually, I'm just going to share while we're waiting for a few other people to post their questions. There were a ton that came in through there. I just want to show you right here, Canadian Immigration Institute. If you type that in, it will take you to my new site right here. And within that, I have my DIY guides, and I've got a bunch that are going to be released. I'm actually meeting with my web developer tomorrow, and we're going to get the finishing touches on. And one of them is labor market impact assessments. So if you have an employer that you know wants to offer you a job offer, but says, wow, paying a lawyer $3,000 or whatever to do that is really expensive, that's why I created this guide. Just like you guys, paying a Canadian lawyer from some of your countries, you know, it's just, you don't have the funds to do it. You're scraping everything together in order to have enough to even prove your settlement funds. But here, right here is the guide. And within the guide here, when you purchase it, it has, well, there's video testimonials and everything that I have here talking about all of the reasons why I created the guide and how it can help you and what's in it. The immigration resource bank that I have associated with it is actually full of samples, sample documents, templates, things that you can use to guide you as you're trying to determine exactly what evidence you need to provide to prove your work history or your funds or whatever it might be. So I tell you guys to turn your mind to that. And actually now is probably a good time. If I shift back here and I click purchase guide, you can purchase it on a monthly basis or you can purchase a lifetime access. And if you click on purchase guide here, right at the top is a coupon code. And if you type in EEDIY50 and click apply, it knocks off 50% off the price. Okay, so I just thought I'd let you guys know about that. And that's for all of you who are watching live now. You guys get the benefit of it. Okay, all right, let's see if we can figure out where I left out because they are going like crazy. Okay, so we've got a ton of questions. I just have to figure out where I put my consult link. And then, wow, oh, there it is. Okay, so first question, this one is from, let's see here, Ajay. Says, hi Mark, many thanks for this live Q&A session. Does it affect my proof of funds eligibility if I have personal loans in my account? Okay, this is a good question. Immigration does not simply take all of your assets and then all of your liabilities. In other words, let's say you have a car loan for $20,000 and your monthly payments are $600. And I'm just using Canadian dollars as an example. They don't say, okay, Ajay has $20,000 saved for settlement in Canada, but Ajay also has a $20,000 loan here. So we're going to take the loan indebtedness and cancel out what's in the account. They don't do that. No, but instead what they look at is the holistically, the totality, we say, of your financial picture so that they can determine, okay, does Ajay really have sufficient funds to settle in Canada based on our minimum expectations and based on the obligations that Ajay has. So an example I'll give you is if, let's say you have a job and you're making $1 million a month, loads of money, it's piling in, you've got unbelievable amounts of money coming in, but you've only set aside, and believe me, I know this is an absurd example, you've got $1 million homes with payments of $50,000 a month in mortgage payments or, crazy stuff like that. And then you have funds that are sufficient for the settlement amount, let's say 20,000, whatever, however many family members you have, but it's enough. And the officer knows when you immigrate to Canada, all of that income you were making is going to disappear. And you're still going to have those mortgages and other things to pay, but not have that income to support it. Well, then they could look at that and say, this is probably, even though they have the minimum settlement funds, all of the other obligations they have are going to eat up that settlement fund in 1 month payment. Well, that's an absurd example, but they can look at that. But if it's just a small little car payment, maybe your payments are $500 a month, that's probably not going to impact negatively on your proof of funds. But this is something I do a lot of in consults with my clients, actually going through and looking at their financials, looking at the issues they have. Sometimes a letter of explanation explaining how the funds are going to be free and clear. other things that you have available to take care of your other financial obligations when you come to Canada. Let's say the loan is for a car. Well, you're going to sell the car. Let's say it's for a home. Well, you're going to sell that home. So then those asset-backed loans are really not as big of an issue. Credit cards, yeah, if you have $30,000 in credit card debt and the payments are massive, then yeah, that could possibly be an issue. But remember, you have to disclose it. It's still an obligation based on the instructions that IRCC provides. Okay, next one, Danish says, what is the best time to add your spouse? Is it easy to add spouse once you receive a confirmation of permanent residence? Okay, Danish, the most important thing, and I wonder, I did a special episode because this is a whole question in and of itself. I did one already. We're going to go to, see if I can find my YouTube channel here. Actually, I'll just flip back because I've got a bunch of stuff going on here. I'm going to try and connect into my YouTube channel. I've got so many different Gmail profiles that it sometimes it can be kind of tricky. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if I can guess right. All right. Okay, so here we are. So on my YouTube channel, I'll go to my channel here. I did a bunch of videos in the past, and earlier in the spring, I had them very strategically focused on different topics. So right here, you can see express entry non-accompanying spouses. This video was devoted to this particular topic. So I'm going to share this, and I'm going to copy the link. I think I got it copied. Yep. And then I'm going to post it right into our feed so that you've got access to it. All right, now I'm going to jump back to your question, and that will give a whole lot more detail. But here's the reality. When it comes to adding a spouse, at all times, your spouse needs to be disclosed. You have to have them medically, and criminally examined. So police clearances and medicals. That's whether they're accompanying you or not. If your spouse, when you add them to your score, is not giving you a high enough CRS score to get your invitation to apply, then many people consider listing their spouse as non-accompanying. If you are already married, and that's the case, and you are listing your spouse as non-accompanying in your profile, and you get an invitation to apply, you cannot add that spouse in after you get your after you file your EAPR, before you get your confirmation of permanent residence. If you add them in, then that spouse's score will be added to yours, and your comprehensive ranking score will be adjusted. If it drops down below the round of invitation level, then you're no longer eligible for express entry. Now, there was a time a year or so ago where we were still able to do that. That loophole wasn't closed by the government, but they have now. So if you have an existing spouse, you list them as non-accompanying, you can't add them into your permanent resident process. You have to land and then sponsor them after as a spouse under the family class. And that can take up to a year or more. If, however, you get married after you've received your EAPR, so after you've received your ITA and you've submitted your EAPR, you get married before you receive your confirmation of permanent residence, or at any point in time before you actually complete your landing, you can add that spouse in. Or if you have a child, you can add them in, because there's a change in family composition. You never ever want to land and complete your landing if your spouse was not disclosed, not examined. The rules have changed, but it can cause lots of problems still within this process. So I still advise my clients, you never want to land as a single individual if you're married. All right, so watch that video and it'll give you a lot more tips and strategies. Amber says, hi Mark. Hey Amber. Okay, Danish says, what should be done if my work experience is almost 37 days short of 3 years, but somehow I still received an ITA as per 3 years of work experience? Is this a system glitch? Shall I proceed ahead and submit my application, or in another case, would you recommend to immediately decline and withdraw? Okay, so this is easy. So Danish, they only count based on months. So it's entirely possible that someone has, let's say if we're just going with 1 year, they have 10 months and 2 days of work experience. Because if they started on the last day of the first month, July 31st, and I better figure out my my calendar. So they started work on July 31st, and then they submitted their profile, and the profile gave them credit for a full year based on working until, let's see, what would be the first of, let's say they submitted their profile May, June, July, May 1st. So technically they would only be 10 months and 2 days. It only counts on a monthly basis. And so, yeah, you're getting credit for something you don't have. So how I deal with my clients is this. If you've received an ITA and your comprehensive ranking system score is high, and you know that by declining, you're going to get drawn again, then I don't worry about it. I clean it up. I decline the invitation. I wait till I've acquired the full 12 months, or in your case, 3 years. Then I just resubmit. Then I just wait for another ITA because I know it's coming. And then it just makes things so much easier and simpler. If, however, I have someone who miraculously had, well, 457, and they're not sure if it's ever going to drop down to that level again, then we proceed forward. And by the time you submit your EAPR, you've actually accumulated that time, or whatever the gap was. If they, because we have 60 days, remember, to file the EAPR. Then I explain to the officer, the credit was given, the ITA was granted before the 12 months, and express entry, the officers genuinely, or generally speaking, will accept that and allow it to go forward because it's not your fault that the ITA came before it should have. But I will explain in a letter of explanation that I've continued forward and I've submitted my EAPR because now I actually have the full 12 months. And so in essence, you've kind of perfected it. Now, understand that advice is based on the likelihood of getting another ITA. Generally speaking, I personally take the position I don't want to take any chances or leave any discretion into the hands of an officer. I want to be able to know for certain that my client is going to actually get their EAPR approved. So if I'm very confident that they're going to get another ITA, then I will often decline it, go back into the pool, and then resubmit once I get a new ITA and I've actually met that year. All right, great question, Danish. That's awesome. That was a good one. Okay, Priji says, hi, Mark. I'd like to know what exactly the difference between criminality check and security check. Okay, so criminality check is basically and these details are not, I can't tell you exactly all the steps that they take when they're going through this, but the criminality is a review of your police certificates and what you've provided to see if there's any inadmissibilities based on the police reports that are coming back. Security is there some history or something you haven't disclosed, involvement with, foreign terrorist groups, or you've been involved in something that would make you a security threat to Canada, even though you were not officially convicted of a crime. Maybe you're associated with some organization or that advocated armed violence or involved in the overthrow of a government through militarized means, those kinds of things. And you'll know because those are the questions that were asked in your background information section when you're completing your EAPR. So that's kind of the difference. All right. Okay, cruising down here. Looks like I had it. Oh, do you know what? I actually picked some that were before. I see I've got my console there again. Okay, Jatin says, hello, Mark. I'm on a work visa in Canada. My wife is an international student. She'll be graduating in April 2020. I'm planning to apply for express entry as the primary applicant. My wife's Ielts score is mandatory at a time of creating e-profile. If you are the primary applicant and you're looking to complete your profile, submit it and get it in so that you can benefit from the timing. This is important, and all of you need to understand this. So I said, in many cases, you don't want to, I'm going to share my screen. In many cases, you don't want to submit your profile too early if you are thinking about submitting an actual, submitting a temporary application like a study permit, because it can cause problems. But if you have no intention of that, or you're already in Canada, then I highly recommend to all my clients that you actually get your profile in as soon as you can. And the reason is, look at this. So the tiebreaker for 457 was March 24th. So if you submitted your profile after that, let's say it never drops down to 457 again. Well, because you delayed in submitting your profile, that tiebreaker rule excludes you and you may have lost your opportunity. So for individuals like Jatin, there's no issues. Your spouse doesn't have to have an Ielts. It's just that when you get into the profile, when you submit it, yes, you will need your language assessment. You will need your ECA and the minimum requirements to qualify. But you're not going to get any comprehensive ranking system points for your spouse until she actually writes it. So you can get your profile in and then go back and actually update it. And when you update it, you don't lose out on the submission date, that lock-in date and time when you submitted it. Okay. And interestingly enough, you can see here it goes all the way down to the actual second. Well, why does it do that? Because whoever submitted their application at 15:32 and 42 seconds UTC time, they were the last one to get an invitation extended to them. So interesting. All right. Okay. Okay. Next question is, what is your cost of EAPR review? Can you offer a special discount for your EAPR review service for live viewers? I value you guys a ton. And so here's what I'll do. We've just received an ITA. Those of you out there who are watching, and we've got right now live, it looks like over 51 people, about 51 people that are watching this kind of live. And it's always tricky because I know most people are all over the world and are probably sleeping and watch these as review. But the reality is, if you send me a private message, my EAPR review right now is at $2,500. If you are ready to go and you are in a situation where you've got your ITA and you're just completing your EAPR, oh boy, why do I do these things? I got to make sure that I don't take on more work than I can handle. If you reach out to me this week, so it's Tuesday, and you send me a message, then I will drop that down to $2,000. I will knock $500 off of my review fee. And actually, do you know what? For an EAPR review, I'll actually, for the first 3 people that reach out to me, I'll actually drop it down to $1,800 for a complete review. And what's included in that review? You see me here. I go through your whole profile, all of your EAPR, all of your documents, everything. So the first 3 people that private message me and say, hey, I want to take advantage of that $1,800 deal, will get that offer. The people after that, if they reach out to me by the end of this week, and I'll take it till Sunday, I will do reviews for $2,000 Canadian. Remember, Canadian. And then here in Alberta, we have the cheapest sales tax in the whole province. It's 5%. So that's what I'll charge. All right. And those who are watching, I will honor that. So the first 3, $1,800. And then after that, anyone who has an ITA and reaches out and actually pays the money this week, I'll do it for $2,000. And why I agree to these things, I don't know. But I've got some capacity, so I'm more than willing to work with you guys. Okay, so there you go. Okay, next one. Let's see here. Okay, Ajay's got another question. Under express entry, in order to get an ITA, is both CRS and FSW selection factor required? Yes, 100%. You have to meet the 67 points out of 100 to even get your profile into the pool. If you don't meet that eligibility requirement for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, Ajay, you're not even going to get in the pool. Then after that, you have to have at least the pass mark. So Ajay, if you're sitting at 471, then there's a very, very strong likelihood that you're going to get through. And obviously right now at 457, you would have received an ITA. All right. Yeah. So the ITA is based on your comprehensive ranking system score. When it comes to the Federal Skilled Worker Program, it's out of 100 points and 67 is the pass mark. Well, the reality is if you had 85 points out of 100 for the Federal Skilled Worker selection criteria, it wouldn't make a difference. You and someone who had 67 points are going to be treated exactly the same for the purposes of eligibility. And then once everybody's in the pool, then it all comes down to the comprehensive ranking system score. Okay. Aryan says, I have recently applied for my EAPR and have declared about my prior visa refusal in the UK. Awesome. That is exactly what you need to do. I was detained by immigration, later was told to leave, and I bought my own ticket and came back. Now in the statutory questions, I've mentioned about the visa refusals and detention, but I'm not sure what I've said that I was asked to leave the country or removed from the UK. Would declaring the prior refusals and detention suffice? It was more of a voluntary departure or voluntary removal from the UK. Okay, this is a perfect example, Aryan, where I would actually need to see how you answered those two questions. Have you ever been removed? Have you ever had a visa refused? There's those two separate questions that exist in the statutory information section of your EAPR, and I would actually need to look at that and review it in detail to be able to say whether or not it would be an issue or not. In most cases, if you've disclosed that information, an officer is probably going to accept that and say, okay, because the questions themselves are a little bit confusing. Have you ever been refused a permit to Canada? Have you ever had your visa application refused? Like, there's a little bit of an overlap. I never have liked those questions very well or very much. Okay, so yeah, if you want to book a consult, we can look through that and I can give you some direction. But generally speaking, it's always best to talk to me before you click submit on your EAPR, and then I can make sure that how you're answering is actually going to cover off all possibilities that they would find you to have misrepresented for not disclosing something you should have. Okay, Maritza says, hi Mark, is there a huge backlog at IRCC in processing applications? We're a group of people, all with January and February EE application submissions that have exceeded the 6-month timeline processing times. Should we rely on the 6-month timeline given when we submit our applications? We have phoned IRCC, contacted the Visa Processing Center, requested GCMS notes, and none of us are any the wiser as to why our applications are exceeding this 6-month timeline. I'm not aware of any specific backlogs at certain periods of time, but by all means, it's possible, 100%. You haven't indicated your country of citizenship. Those sometimes play a factor because of security screening. And sometimes a lot of people can get stuck in those backlogs because there's only so many people doing the security screening. And if your country isn't cooperating and giving information, that's how backlogs can be created and delays. All right. Okay, Winnie says, what's the validity of a bank statement for proof of funds? How many months in advance should it be obtained? Winnie, I like to ensure my bank statements are as close as possible. And in all honesty, remember, it's the bank letter that we're looking for. And if it comes to bank statements, then I try to get it as current as I possibly can. So when I submit my EAPR, it's not older than a month. So I don't like to have anything older than a month. Will they accept it if it's 2 or 3 months old? Well, I guess it's possible, but I don't like to leave anything to chance. Arvin says, hi Mark, my wife lived in England for 5 years. Does she need to get a police clearance certificate from the UK and credit report? If she lived continuously for at least 6 months in a row within the past 10 years, the answer is yes, 100%. Okay, and then in terms of exactly what the police certificate needs to include, go to the IRCC site and always follow their instructions explicitly. So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna type in IRCC police certificates, just like that. How to get a police certificate. Then I'm gonna search for the United Kingdom right here. And then I'm gonna follow these instructions explicitly. So if you're not a citizen right here of the United Kingdom, if you live, you do this. If you live outside, well, it's pretty similar. So, and then the special notes and considerations, you can see here, if your police certificate states no live trace, that means that there was a prior criminal issue that came up. You will have to provide documentary evidence of your step-down convictions, okay? And then you have to go right to the ACRO directly, and then once completed, your police certificate will be mailed directly to you, all right? So there's a quick little overview. Okay, let's see. I know people have probably repeated it because I jumped too quick. Okay, is a reference letter enough to prove work experience, satisfying all IRCC requirements, or do you recommend sending other additional information like bank statements, etc.? This is a great question. if you were to have worked in Canada and you have a reference letter from a Canadian employer, generally that's going to be pretty close to enough. However, you will see in the instructions, often IRCC asks if you are in Canada to provide a copy of your most recent T4s. And that's basically your statement of earnings that you've paid taxes on. And so that's another good proof. Sometimes I'll include records of employment. For other countries, yeah, if I'm coming from the US, I will often include a W-2 just to confirm. And if you see in your personal document checklist, it will also indicate for you to provide pay slips if available, or pay stubs if available. So I'll include them. If I'm an individual and the reference letter is coming from a country where IRCC, there's a high rate of fraud, and, where are those countries? Well, sometimes India, Pakistan, Nigeria, sometimes those countries, there are higher incidences of fraud. And in those circumstances, then I often do provide additional information. What are some other things to think about? Well, what if your company doesn't have an online presence? What if they don't have a website? There's no other way of independently corroborating that the company you work for even exists. Well, then in some cases, I'll actually go to the corporate registry in the country, get a confirmation that the company is incorporated, any other business information that shows the company actually exists. So there's a lot of different things to think about. Okay, so now, Amber says, "Hi Mark, do you have to declare a speeding ticket in Canada? I got a fine and I paid it, and I then I did not have to go to the court." No, speeding tickets are not considered criminal offenses that you would have to disclose. If the ticket amounted to something that was such as dangerous driving or the equivalent, because our criminal code has changed recently, but something that would be serious enough to be captured by our criminal code, then yes, absolutely. Dangerous driving, causing death, things like that. And like I said, you have to check the most recent provisions within the criminal code. And if it's not just a bare speeding ticket, a municipal offense, then you don't have to worry about a provincial offense. Okay, another question, is it okay to have full online-based full-time work experience? Companies are legit and I have reference letters for all. Okay, well, I can tell you I've been dealing at length with a client right now who is struggling with this exact issue. A freelance translator. Anyone who's working online freelance, it's really tough. And I'll be honest, I can't go through every single thing that you need to do, other than maybe I'll shift here and I'll just go to here, and I'm going to punch in work history experience right here. If you are self-employed, like freelance, there is a section right here that talks about what you need to provide for self-employed work experience. And I'm just going to copy this here, and I'm going to paste this in, in here. So in this section here, you will see that there are specific things that they want to see. And the way I approach it is, okay, these things are fine down here. That's great. These are suggestions. Remember, self-declared main duties or affidavits are useless, so don't waste your time with them. But what I'm trying to prove in all of these is the exact same thing that they're asking for in the reference letter from a traditional employer-employee relationship. So job title, duties here, responsibilities, job status, dates worked, number of work hours, and your salary. I try to find whatever evidence I can for my employers who are self-employed to satisfy each of those components. And why? Because those components, and I think this is CEC, FSWP eligibility, because those components all relate specifically back to the minimum requirements to qualify through the Federal Skilled Worker Program. And obviously to get credit for your comprehensive ranking system score. So all of these work experience factors that they're looking for, the same job type, the same job, so it's in the same NOC, at least, and this is just the minimum requirements. Last 10 years, proof that it's paid, proof that that you have at least 1 year of continuous work, and if we go up here, that it is a skilled position. That's where the job duties come in. So that's kind of how I approach it. And yeah, so with most of my clients, it's a consult. And then even that, usually most of the clients who book consults with me have me work with them through a review or have me just represent them fully to make sure we're covering off every possible angle, because I can tell you this is one of the most common ways express entry applications are refused. It's because of an inability to prove those essential elements of eligibility for federal skilled work experience. All right. Okay. Let's go down here, see if we can find the right ones. Okay, Kathy says, okay, I'd like to know, can I gain entry to Canada just as a tourist coming in to visit and then get an extension of visa with intent to move to Canada? Kathy, anybody can apply for a visitor visa to come to Canada. That's not an issue. But ultimately, you still have to meet the minimum requirements of express entry. If you want to work in Canada, your first work permit can't be obtained from within Canada. It has to be outside. Your first study permit, subject to some exceptions. There's always exceptions for Americans and other, exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, study permits in the same way have to be applied, the first one outside of Canada. And so you're going to have to leave anyways. But coming as a visitor, you can do that. If you independently qualify through express entry, technically you could submit your application from within Canada if you wanted to, but you have to show that you're a true visitor. Okay, Wallace says, thanks for your help. Always received ITA without spouse. I want to add her now. Recalculated score, and it's exactly the minimum CRS for my round. Should I be worried about tiebreaker date? If you've got your invitation to apply, then you've got it. It's not an issue. But your situation, if you're right on that 457 mark, Wallace, I recommend you book a consult so we can go through this. If you want to add your spouse, there is still possible room for you to add her, as long as your comprehensive ranking system score does not fall below the minimum level if you do add her. But trust me, it requires some clear submissions on this and an explanation of why your spouse is now accompanying, and clear evidence that you will not fall below the CRS score from which you were given your ITA. Okay, Islam says, does working from home and co-working space will be counted in short remote job? Okay, I've just covered that off in detail here with let's see, who was it? I think it was, actually, I don't know what his name is because it's in a different language. Okay, so yeah, check that one out, Islam. I think I already dealt with that. Okay, Harjat said, I studied in Ontario for 2 years but never worked, and oh, I'm so sorry. Exhausted my post-grad because I had to return to my home country for personal problems. After 5 years now, I want to immigrate to Canada. CRS 418, can I hope to pick by Ontario as I studied there? Oh, yeah, that's a tough one, Harjat. I can't say one way or another. The fact that you had studies there for sure will help a little bit when they're just looking at the general tendency you may have to stay there. But ultimately, it's going to factor really, really low. Okay. Virender says, hello, Mark. Hope you're doing well. It's been 9 months since my AOR. I got married after my AOR, added my spouse. She's now added in my profile, but my profile hasn't moved ahead since then. Still only medical cleared. I understand adding a spouse can add further months. Yeah, adding a spouse can add like 6 months, my friend. My question is, what are the options apart from calling CIC, raising web forms, done both, always receive standard response? Any suggestions? I don't, Vrender. When you add a spouse midway through the process, or you have a child, or whatever it might be, it basically throws the processing out the door and they don't have to expedite anything. It can take up to 1.5 years. And for most of my clients, adding a spouse can easily add on another 6 months processing. All right. David says, Mark, thanks for helping us out. I'm a CEC inland applicant and submitted my application successfully. Now I got married after a month and asked IRCC to add my spouse as accompanying. Now, if my points get reassessed, then it drops well below CRS cutoff, in which I was invited. I remember you took us through A11.2 in one of your EE Live Q&As. Yes. It says your points would not be reassessed if the family composition happened after EAPR. Yes, that's correct. I received my GCMS notes, and the analyst mentioned that my verified score dropped from the actual score and put my application under review required on A11.2. Yep, and they do that. They will review if you're adding someone new. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to apply the policy. and clearly stated that primary applicant got married and CRS points revised. Yep. So ultimately, that is a normal process. I can tell you when I do this, I provide a very, very clear submission drawing back to A11.2, confirming the policy that the CRS score is not revised because I was married after submitting the EAPR. And so as it stands, that is the exemption. So so don't be surprised because they have to do that. That's a part of the process. And then they decide whether to apply the policy. Okay. Okay, so this one here, Usman says, my experience letter for the employer is not signed, but stamped. It's from the company, not from my supervisor. I worked in Japan for a Japanese company and they don't sign the official documents. Instead, they have official stamp. Also, a supervisor can't from a letter there. It has to be from a company. That's what they told me. Will it be okay? Usman, you just have to, it is what it is. If that's the best that you can do, then you need to explain clearly in your letter of explanation. There should still be someone that they can contact if they want to verify. And if it's just the general human resource section within the company, then so be it. But I would provide a letter of explanation indicating that based on the policy of the company, they don't provide that information. But there should be someone who can verify your work experience. Okay, Gurjit says, one quick question, please. I want to apply for my police certificate from the UK. I'm going back to India soon. Should I apply after I already left the UK, or I can apply before and order it to my address and take it with me? Ultimately, it's the date on which the police certificate is issued. Often, if you have a choice and it's easy to get it after you leave, I always do that. It avoids all the confusion. If you're able to request it and it's not a big hassle after you leave, then if you never go back to the UK, that police certificate is going to be valid forever. It gets a little bit more gray if you obtain it and then you leave after it was issued, because then you've got basically 6 months. All right. Okay, Kathy's asking about minimum sufficient funds. Yes, you do need to have sufficient funds, Kathy. It's all dependent upon your family composition, how many members, and all you need to do is just search proof of funds, EE. I'll show you just so that you can see here. So if I want to figure out what the proof of funds are, I type it in, proof of funds, IRCCEE, and then here you can click on this link and I'll post it here for you. Copy and paste and enter. And here you can see this is the minimum funds. So if you do not have this funds, you won't be able to immigrate to Canada unless you're already working in Canada or have a job offer and are exempt from providing this information. Okay, let's keep scrolling down. Okay. Gurjit says also, do you only provide guidance to apply, or you actually take the application from the client, they submit it on behalf as a representative? 100% Gurjit. I am a full immigration representative, and my goal is to provide exactly the support my clients need. Many of my clients, the ones that I've just got drawn now, I've got a number that received ITAs where we fully represent them. So 100% I do that, and I charge $5,000 for that full representation. And I charge that because then we, after it's submitted, deal with all issues on the back end. And $5,000 is pretty much the going rate for Canadian immigration lawyers, at least ones who know what they're doing in Canada. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Ajay says, hi Mark, thanks for your reply. Referring to my previous question regarding proof of funds, in case my obligations are quite high, then will getting a gift deed resolve the issue or still? Well, no, absolutely. If you've got a gift deed that provides even more money that's available and can help to offset the obligations that you have, Ajay, then yeah, I would get it, especially if you're concerned that your monthly payments and you've got high debt, that can be an issue. Okay. Hira says, is the job acceptable if I don't have any proof of showing salary going into my bank account? Well, many companies do pay cash, but you definitely need to be able to confirm and be able to prove to an officer through a very detailed letter. Maybe you have pay stubs. I get whatever I can, but being paid in cash doesn't necessarily disqualify your work experience. Okay, Muzuddin says, hi Mark, while uploading documents in EE, is it mandatory, I'm assuming, to upload reference letters for all the companies which you have worked in past under employment records. Like in my case, I worked for 7 companies. Can I upload reference letters for only my present company? And for the rest of the companies, can I upload offer letter, relieving, or experience letter? Also, do we have to upload only reference letter? Okay, so Mozadine, I can tell you that the starting point in your work history is that you're only going to put work history in there that relates to, or that covers the maximum 3 years of skilled work experience you need in the past 10 years. You don't have to include all of your work history for the whole 10 years, especially if you're going to have to go through 7 companies. But if you need 7 companies in order to prove that 3 years, then then you're going to do what you need to do. But if you have certain companies where it's easier to get the reference letter and others where it isn't, then consider listing the ones where you can get the reference letters as the work history, and then everything is fully disclosed in your personal history section, all of your work. So it's just in your work history where you're going to list the work that you want to claim CRS points for. And remember, once you've got 3 years, you've maxed out, you're not getting any more CRS points. But remember, you always have to take into consideration your federal skilled worker program eligibility. And if you needed 6 years of skilled work experience to meet the 67 out of 100 point threshold for the federal skilled worker program, then maybe you might need to have all 7 companies. Okay, so take that into consideration. All right. Okay, I'm going to try to get to some people here who I haven't answered questions from. Hi, Mark. I've created my Express Entry profile multiple times, but I've not submitted anything and only calculated my CRS. Would that affect my student visa application? If you've got a valid profile that was actually submitted and in the pool, then you've got a record of having an interest in becoming a permanent resident of Canada. I'm not saying that just because you have a profile, your study permit's going to get refused. However, an officer will definitely take that into consideration. Okay, Waka says, my funds in the account are now less than the required Canadian amount because of a drastic decrease in my country's currency value in the past few months. It was enough at the time of EAPR. What should I do? Increase your funds. So add more funds in there to make sure that you have enough, notwithstanding the drastic decrease in your country's currency. So I would add more so when the time comes when you submit when you get your confirmation of permanent residence and you're landing, that you have those funds in there. It was true and correct when you submitted your EAPR, and that's fine. But when the time comes for your approval, make sure that you've added whatever else you needed to make sure you meet the minimum amount. Okay, Faizan says, hello, Mark. Wes gave me an ECA as 4-year Bachelor of Law degree equivalency, and I have a bar license. So can I select professional license degree in my application? Oh, guys, these ones give me fits. I would need to look at that specifically, Faizan, to be able to tell you. All of you, I think, know, and I'll share this here while I've got my screen open. If you go to ECA, IRCC, let's see if we can find the good one. Educational Credential Assessments, this link right here. So what I do when I'm trying to assess whether or not it works or not, I go to what your report means, and then I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to copy this. I wonder if I can, that doesn't look like I can reply directly to you. I'll put that in the general link. Then once I'm here, I scroll down and then I choose, okay, this is for comprehensive ranking system. Whoop, let me go back here. I clicked the wrong one. I go here and then I said comprehensive ranking system. Then I click see points. Then I try to find 4-year Bachelor of Law degree equivalency. So I'll go to Bachelor of Law, and then it says professional degree needed to practice in a licensed profession. So that's what it has for Bachelor of Laws. 4-year Bachelor of Law degree equivalency, in my mind, it sure seems like it should be equated to you being able to get the professional, master's or professional degree. So that's the best that you can do in those circumstances. Okay. All right. Okay, and I see, Kathy, you've posted your emails. Make sure you go to the link that I've posted for booking a consult. Okay, Riemann says, I worked for a college as an English teacher for 5 years. My educational background was from English language and literature. Okay, Ramon, you need to book a consult, buddy. I can't answer your... I can't do a self-assessment through these live Q&As. This is the fun part, right? Because lots of people have lots of questions. So Riemann, you'd actually need to book a consult, and then we can go through all of that. Okay, Shraddha says, thank you for doing this. I have a clue of questions here. Okay, so I'll answer one of them. What is the realistic timeline on an average for getting a PR through a PNP? Very difficult to say. Each PNP has their own processing time. So for example, I'll just use Alberta. It's probably about 4 months or so to get your nomination. And then right now, I think it's 15 to 20 months they list filing a paper-based application. If you get drawn, though, however, through express entry, one of the express entry streams for the various PNPs, then at that stage, basically what you have to do is you get your nomination, which maybe takes 3 months, 4 months, and then you're filing through the regular express entry process, which then means it could be processed in about 6 months. So there you go. Okay, I'm just going to skip because I'm just going to try to answer just one because I want to get to the bottom of this if possible. I'm already well over my time. Oh, it's almost an hour and a half that I've been doing this, guys. Okay, Amrit Paul says, hi Mark, my CRS has dropped by 3 points due to a change in Ielts score after notice NOI from Alberta. I got NOI on July 31st. My Ielts was expiring on the 19th, so I gave a new test and my score reduced by 3. Will that affect my nomination of Alberta? Please reply. It's possible. Ultimately, you need to, when it comes to you've got an NOI, right? It doesn't say if you've gotten your nomination. Yeah, I would maybe take another crack at writing the test as quickly as you can, but it could. It depends on what they were looking for, but you do have to notify them. Okay, Bassett says, hey Mark, I've tried calling different companies in Canada, but they have the position in their company, but they are not willing to go for the LMIA. Yep, I understand that completely. It's very, very, very common, and it's tough. It really is tough. Trying to connect with a company who's looking to hire is no easy feat, and although the market is starting to pick up, it is tough. So, the only thing you can do is continue trying to reach out to companies directly. If you have friends or family or anyone in Canada, they can often be a way to get into a company, at least get that introduction. But yeah, it's not easy. Okay, George says, hello Mark, may I know the total cost of your services after getting invitation to the permanent resident? In those cases, like I said, and I talked about this at length, getting the invitation to apply, the whole process express entry is the same. So whether I'm helping at the profile stage or after, I charge $5,000 Canadian for full representation. But like I said, and I'll repeat it again, the first 3 people to message me in my message box that want me to review their EAPR, I will do it for $1,800 Canadian, which really I have to limit it to 3, just because I'm trying to be fair. But the rest of you, I will do it for $2,000 if you private message me and you reach out to me before the end of this week, and that you actually sign the engagement and make the payment. All right, so I will honor that, George. Okay, Jimmy says, hi Mark, my wife has been invited for AINP, but her first 4 months of work experience were through an agency. We're concerned the officer will refuse our application because she has 2 employers and do not know what the agency might say about her work. They only paid her salary. However, the employer stated that in her current letter. Okay, well, ultimately, whatever you're submitting, you're going to disclose and try to get a letter from both of them explaining who was responsible for overseeing the work and who was responsible for the payment. And so you'd want to get a reference letter from both of them. The AINP is something that I know very well. So you really need to try to substantiate both sides, but it depends on what you put in your original application. So if you want to book a paid consult, we can go through that and I can talk about that in detail. All right. Safe says, hi Mark, I've recently received the response to pay. Oh, great. Knowing that I have been waiting for 8 months and I'm losing hope, frankly, can I do something to help speed up things? I recently received the response to pay RPRF fees. Well, dude, you're at the end of the path. Yeah, it's obviously taken longer, but if they're requesting your right of permanent resident fee, then you're nearing the end. So patience, and be very grateful because there's so many people that are not at that stage. Okay. Suk Chain says, hello Mark, I'm here in Canada on an open work permit and working as a food counter attendant in BC. Okay, very cool. My question, can I apply paper PNP application? BC PNP still count the points or not? I have a job offer for my job. Sukchain, there often is some very, very favorable options. To go through all the different PNP streams for BC, you need to book a consult so that we can look through it. But yeah, if you're working for a BC employer and they're willing to support you, there are avenues. Okay. Dash says, nice suit. Thanks, Mahesh. Okay, Vishwal says, my job title is matched with 7237, stringer machine operator, but on my payslip, production operator is written. Probably not a big deal, Vishwal. It all comes down to the duties that you're actually listing. Once again, most of the consults I do are designed to determine that the person actually has the right knock, because that's one of the more common reasons it gets refused. Yeah, Maritza, I can't say what this whole issue is with all of the delays. I really can't. I wish I could help. Rura says, if someone got an NOI from Alberta and is in the processing state and his Ielts got to expire, then need to take Ielts again to maintain his profile. Yeah, I would do it 100%. Because if you got an expression of interest, a notice of interest from Alberta, you still have to file your application through the general express entry process, and you can't do that unless you have a valid IELTS score. They expire after 2 years, as you know. And yes, you need to. You need it for all purposes. So I always will notify Alberta, the province, but rewrite it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we're cruising through here, trying to find people that I haven't answered a question yet to. Bapasha says, sir, how many times can we request for GCMS notes? We requested for web form, but it's almost 3 months, no reply. Already got 2 notes after ITA. Bapasha, dude, there's no restriction on how many you ask, but I can guarantee the officers are probably like, well, we're not making this one urgent because we've already done 2 previous, but there's no cap on how many times you can request it. Okay, so Hina says, applied for inland spousal. They sent me an email that the application is sent to Etobicoke. Yep, book a consult. That's an issue. If they're questioning the legitimacy of your application, they do it by sending it to a local office for review. So book a consult and we can talk about it. Rauf says, after 1 year of express entry expiration, should we just open a new account and reapply? No. Use your same account, but just resubmit it. So you're not going to create a new MyCIC, I guess is what I'm saying. But you are going to create a new express entry profile and resubmit it if it expires. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Harjat says, oh, this is awesome. One more, while applying visitor visa, I did not mention about one of my jobs because of a stupid consultant. Now that job is my primary knock. My employer can prove that if I got an ITA, and I also had income tax returns for that year, what will this work? I can't help you, Arjat. Really, I'll be honest. The problems that result when people don't take care and attention, I'm sure you paid this consultant hardly anything, and you get exactly what you pay for. I wish I could give you advice on how to fix it. There's a whole host of things potentially that you could, but you're probably locked in their stupid representative portal, and it's just a mess. It's their job to fix it, that consultant. And if they screwed it up, I'd get my money back, and I would try to, you can book a consult with me. We can talk about it. We can see what might be available, but often there's not a lot that can be done. Okay, Rauf says, when the agent said in a letter not convinced that the person will go back to his country, usually what arguments you use in your explanation letter to back your application? Okay, Rauf, that's a temporary resident question. Ultimately, I'm assuming that was on a refusal letter of a study permit or something like that. Happens all the time. Really tough to difficult to overcome. You have to request the GCMS notes, find out exactly what the real reasons were, and then consider resubmitting with more and further evidence. Okay, let's see here. Just looking here to see if there's anyone else here. Medea says, can we apply for Canadian immigration while in the process of immigration to another country? Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Okay. All right. Okay, so DC says, I have a skill set like technical writer, business analyst, and now I have done my data science certification. For which of these posts can I apply, and for which do we have more scope on Canada? That also, DC, would require a consult. I wouldn't be able to give you advice on everything, like in terms of which provincial nominee program would work best. The titles even aren't helpful because I need to see the exact duties to make sure you've got the right NOC. Then it's a matter of going back and seeing historically which provinces invited which occupations. When it comes to IT stuff, Ontario every once in a while will do a big scoop out of the Express Entry pool for IT related positions. Okay, I think we are. I better run this. I better stop this one. Otherwise, my computer's going to shut down because I've got so much data on here. Okay, all right. I'm going to have to stop it there, guys. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in and watching another edition of the Express Entry Live Q&A being live broadcast here on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. I want to thank everybody for their participation. I hope I was able to at least give everybody a shot at answering questions. I know sometimes I can't. Normally, I never go this long. This is insane, but I just felt like I wanted to just try to be helpful. So, like I said, I'll reiterate here at the end, if you would like me to take advantage of my silver plan, I call it. Usually I charge $2,500 Canadian for that. But if you reach out, sign the engagement and pay the fee before the end of this week, I will be willing to do it for $2,000. And the first 3 people who private message me through my Mark Holthe Facebook Messenger, you will be given an opportunity to have that review for $1,800, which is a freaking lot of money below her. But whatever, I'm here. Whatever, I'm here to help. And you guys obviously are keen enough that I know what you give me is going to be good before I get it. And then it'll be a matter of me helping to work through the tough spots. All right, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful day. I wish you all the best as you navigate this crazy world that we call, and I'm listening for it, yes, Express Entry. Take care.